Marilyn went to get the milk.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. First, to, of course, thank our sponsor, Rita Geller, and hopefully by next week's class. She's coming back today. Okay, so we expect to see her here next week, bright and early. So we'll be continuing on page 2b, Beis Amud Beis. If you're looking using the Hebrew one, go to page 2b, Beis Amud Beis, count up 10 lines from the solid text in the middle, and you'll kind of come to right where we're starting. If you're using the English, in the middle of the Gemara, the English starts. So it's 2b3, the beginning of that page. Okay. Everybody got it? 2b3, starting English. Michael, you're welcome to sit in. It's a women's class, but okay. So before we get into
What is the English page?
2b3. Yeah, the Hebrew is Beis Amud Beis, and the English 2b3. So we had. I'm sorry, Marilyn Milanek is not here yet. Maybe she'll still be here, because when you had the boutique last week, she was so excited. She came out and she said to me that she applied one of the principles that we learned here to something that took place there. And
which principle?
Yeah,
okay,
we did together.
you did together. You were involved. Okay,
We
so
went to Maryland.
Tova, come up and tell us what happened.
No, that's okay.
Tell us what the. Okay, all right. So Tova is a little shy. And the idea, though.
I've got to try it sometime.
Oh, no.
The idea, though, is people say, well, why am I spending so much time studying whose ox was gored and all that? That doesn't apply to my life today. But I'm here to tell you that it does. And what we've been learning is basically how disputes are settled in court when two people have a claim on the same piece of property, same object, right? And we learned three different types of disputes, okay? And basically three general categories. The first one, oh, here's Marilyn.
Okay, I gotta hear about this dispute.
So, okay, Marilyn, we're gonna be calling you up to explain to tell us what happened. But the three types of disputes. The first one is called Shnayim Ochazim. So if you remember our first class, so Fran and Miriam were holding on to the sweater together, and they came into our courtroom. We are the judges, and they said, each one of them said, I found it and I picked it up and it's mine, right? So that's called Shnayim. Two Ochazim. Two are holding, two are grabbing. That's the first case, and in that case there are two subcategories. Right, so I learned in the 8th grade, if you're diagramming sentences, you don't put an A if there's no B. So there's an A and a B. So the A is found items, which is what happened with Fran and Miriam. And B, purchased item, which is what happened with Marilyn and Tova and the hat, right? So the point was that each one of them says, I paid for the item. I bought this item. And we call on the merchant, the vendor, to decide who actually paid, and the merchant said both of them gave me money. So now it's up to us to solve that. The second case, or the second subcategory is the chenvani al pinkoso. The chenvani comes from the word chanus, a store, right? So the storekeeper and his ledger. So the example that we gave is that we said if Todd, our landscaper, has to pay all of his workers every Friday afternoon, and he's got workers in various different sites around the area, he can't make it to all of them at the same time. So what Todd could do, of course today everybody's paid electronically, so it doesn't exactly work, but let's say all of his workers wanted to get paid in cash every Friday afternoon. Todd couldn't be in 3 or 4 places at the same time. He would arrange with the lady that owns the famous deli in our little shopping center over here, that when the landscapers, when the grass cutters would come in to get paid, she would pay them, and then Todd would pay her back, right? That's the chen v'nei alpin koso. And even there were two cases. One was the workers who were being paid by the merchant, and the second one was somebody sent his son, was the example, to pick up something from the store, and he said to the storekeeper, I'll pay you. You give him whatever it is, and I'll pay you later. So that's the second category, the chen v'nei, with his pinkas, with his ledger. The third category was a para, shenagcha, the cow that was gored by the neighbor's ox, right? So we said that Harriet's cow was gored by Tova's ox. The cow is dead now, and there's no dispute that Harriet's cow was killed by Tova's ox. The question is, there is a full-term calf dead on the ground next to the cow. Nobody saw this event taking place. We know that it was the one cow and the one ox, because that's always in the pen, but now there's this fetus, really, or maybe it was a calf. That's the question. When was that calf born, right? Because if the calf was born prior to the goring, so it was born and it died, the ox had nothing to do with its death. And therefore, the owner of the ox, Tova, has no obligation to compensate Harriet for that dead calf.
Even though the mother would be the one to nurture that calf, and without the mother, that calf has no life.
Well, okay, but we sort of, that was kind of a discussion that we had last week about the fact that maybe the fright is what caused the cow to die, or whatever it was, or maybe the calf saw the mother being gored and the calf died of a broken heart. Whatever it was, those kinds of things that's kind of beyond our scope. As here we are with judges, we're only judging the case based on the facts as they're presented to us. So we know the calf is dead, the cow is dead, the ox is standing there, and if we say that the calf had not yet been born at the time of the goring, that means that the ox killed the calf also. And therefore, Tova, the owner of that ox, is obligated to compensate Harriet for the value of that calf. Okay, so you have three different ways where there is a dispute over who owns something, who owes the other one. So-
Okay, I have a question. Marilyn, there was no cow and no ox at the boutique. So we wanna find out exactly what happened.
Okay.
Brown, come up here so you'll be on the camera too, everybody will be able to hear you. Come up and tell us what happened, because I saw Marilyn, she was so excited that she said, I got the hat.
That's why
Don't be
Tova didn't want to tell
embarrassed.
us. Tova was excited because she started saying, it's the Gemara class.
So it's a practical application, so
It was sort of a practical application, sort of. Okay, I put my own personal wisdom into it, so, you know.
What happened?
There's a hat. Okay, so I spent about an hour of choosing, and I came down to 2 hats. And one was
I'm just gonna turn the
black,
camera on.
just like what Marguerite's wearing, and the other was a very interesting brown beige, which was unique. I had never seen it before. I handed both hats to the woman that you do, you know, the boutique routine, and she went to put them in the bag and write me the receipt. Well, I got the receipt, which means I have to pay for both hats. Okay. Meanwhile, somebody else, don't ask me what her name was or who she was, she'll remain anonymous, said, what a beautiful hat, I really like it. Can I try it on?
No.
Yes, and I looked her in the eye, and being me, I said, sure. Well, a half an hour later, the hat hadn't come back yet. Sure, try the hat on means take it to the nearest bathroom so you can really look at yourself.
Oh, I met her in the bathroom trying on the hat.
Now, I'm not accusing her of anything but after half an hour, this one's going, it's the Gomorrah class. And I'm going, well, I could go pay for it, but I'm only getting one hat out of the two, what do I do? And the hat lady was very busy. She wasn't getting involved in the whole situation. About 15 minutes later, the hat came back. But,
You bought the hat?
and I bought the hat.
thought you
And I
bought-
should have worn it, I forgot, I'm sorry. I do like the hat, I'd like to get another one.
I zoomed in.
I'm not sure it wasn't a one of a kind.
Helen Baker.
Yeah,
In this,
but
but in this
it-
situation, she had a receipt, right? You had proof that you paid for it.
No, I hadn't paid
Oh, you
for
didn't
it.
pay for it,
She
yeah.
hadn't paid, okay.
The way the boutique works is you take your receipt, you go to the
Main.
To the
The
cashier in the
cashier.
front, right,
The
right.
cashier.
the cashier, and you
Cashier.
either give them a cash or a check, and you take that paid for thing back to Helen, and Helen gives you the two hats. But I knew there were not two hats.
Right, so not exactly the same as our
But
case.
am I
It was
responsible for
close,
paying
kind of.
for it?
But it
No, you didn't get the
seems-
merchandise.
She hadn't given it to you? If
But
she-
I gave her permission to take it.
Right.
Right, so,
No, you
But
gave her
because
permission to
of
try
the
it.
length of the interval, the time passed
right,
for so long that the suspicion arose
Right.
that the lady walked off with the hat, purchased it, and
Oh,
walked off
or
with the
didn't.
hat.
Or didn't.
Didn't, she couldn't have
well, let's
purchased
say she
Wait
did, all
a
right.
minute, right, but
She
that
didn't
was the
purchase it.
suspicion.
Why couldn't she have purchased it?
Hello, how long are you gonna
Helen
try
wouldn't
to
do
hide
that.
Because
out?
Helen would
She,
not,
you think she would remember?
Yes.
She would remember even with all the,
Helen would not have
She
given her a
would, uh-huh.
receipt for the hat.
No.
Which brings us really to an interesting principle, which Jill brought up a couple of weeks ago.
You
Can't they
remember
work it-
that?
What?
I'm impressed. You remember Jill brought it up a couple of weeks ago, wow.
Can't,
He's in Century Village and he's.
That's a lot here, yeah.
he's
thanks, Henny. The principle that Jill brought up was, can't they work it out together? Why does it have to come to litigation in a court case? And so what took place with Marilyn and this unnamed person is that they did work it out, right? Because eventually the lady came back, you took the hat, you showed me the very nice hat with the sequins on it, a brown one, and it all worked out. But the point is that these kinds of disputes can happen, right? Especially, and the Gemara says, especially when an item is particularly in demand, right? If it was just a generic item, a New York Yankees baseball cap or something like that, there are a million of them around there, nobody would get upset. But if it's a special item that more than one person really wanted it, now you sometimes the court has to come into play. So that's the first case is when both of them are holding on to it, right? So this is not exactly right because they didn't both come into our courtroom holding the hat, but they both wanted it, and you settle it between you and, okay? The case where the two people found it, they can't agree, they come into us, we have to settle. So that's one type where each one of them has a definite claim, and we don't know, we have no way of knowing other than their own statements. And the result is, the Gemara says we make them both swear. And what do they swear? Do you remember?
175.
Well, that's the second case. Okay, that's the first case is Fran and Miriam come in holding on to this sweater. Both of them are claiming, each of them claims, it's all
they
mine.
found it.
It's all, I found it and it's mine, right? And if it's all mine, and we're making them swear, what can we do? We can't have them both swear it's all mine, because then we're compelling somebody to swear falsely. Obviously, it can't belong completely to each of them, right? So the shvuah, the oath that they take, is that I swear that I own in this item no less than 50%. Right, Robin? And then we divide it. And the division is either, if it's an item that can be divided and each one remains with a valuable half, then we cut it in half. If we can't do it that way, we sell it, divide the proceeds, okay? So this first case is one where each of them has a strong case, and we have no way of knowing what took place. The second one, with the storekeeper So the store, what happened? So Todd told the storekeeper to pay his workers, and on Monday morning, when all the workers are getting together, Pedro comes over to Todd and says, "I didn't get paid." So Todd says, "What are you talking about? You got paid. You went into Famous and they paid you." And she told me that she had paid. She gave me a list of all the people, and you were one of those people that she paid. He said, "No, I didn't pay. I did not get paid." So Todd runs over to the lady, to the store, and says, "Pedro says he didn't get paid." She says, "Well, I paid him." So now you have a different situation. We have the storekeeper says she paid, the employee says he did not get paid. Now what are we gonna do, right? So in the end, what has to happen is that poor Todd has to pay them both. He has to pay the storekeeper because he had an agreement with her to pay her back what she advanced. On the other hand, the employee, well, this man has to feed his family, and if he didn't get paid, it's Todd's obligation. So Terry brought up, well, don't they have bookkeeping? Didn't they write it down, right? Yeah, of course, they should have written it down, but they didn't. And it's up to us now to solve that. So that's the second one. The third one is the case of the cow with the dead calf. And in that case, we know definitely something has taken place, right? But we don't know what actually happened in terms of that calf. And there's no way for us to verify it, right? So in the first case, there are two people claiming. The second case, there's also two people claiming, conflicting claims. And the third one, you have nobody really claiming as far as the calf. We know the calf is dead. We don't know who's responsible. And in that case, what happens is that he pays half damages for the calf because.
We also don't know when the calf was born also, right?
Right, all we know is that there's a dead calf there. So if the calf, what's our doubt? What creates the doubt? If the calf were born after the goring, well, then the ox caused the death of the calf,
Right.
just as it caused the death of the cow, and Tova has to pay Harriet for the calf also. If the calf was born and then died before the cow was gored, now that ox has nothing to do with the death of the calf, right?
Okay.
So therefore, he pays actually 25%, because the rule is if you have an ox,
25% and for the calf.
25% for the calf, right, and 50% for the cow, because if you have if you own an ox and that ox has never gored another animal before, it's not a habitual gorer, the owner of that ox has to compensate the injured party 50%. If that ox has done it a couple of times already, now it's the third time, then you have to pay the full value. But in our case, it was a first timer, and so he pays 50% for the value of the cow, 25% for the value of the calf, because it's in doubt. Jill?
What if there was a closed gate and the bull got in because somebody forgot to close the gate? So wouldn't it be the owner of the bull's fault because she didn't close the gate?
So now you're introducing another question.
But
Is
it's a real
there
part of the evidence.
is there someone else involved
Yeah.
in was there some kind of negligence or something like that? Was somebody who was supposed to be watching that ox or whatever? But you're bringing something that's kind of beyond our scope, right? Because that brings us to a whole other list of questions which we can do. But ours is a simple case.
Uh-huh.
We know it's one ox, one cow, one dead
open barn.
calf. One open barn, one pen, whatever it is, and it couldn't have been anything other than that ox and that cow and that calf.
What I
Cool.
wanted to ask was, the calf that is dead, no evidence of goring, just a well-looking calf that is not breathing,
Right,
no Lashambo, no CPR. But seriously, right?
right.
So there is no goring marks or anything from the ox to the baby calf?
Right.
Okay,
So,
that's my
right.
question. Otherwise, maybe the price goes up here.
Right, but you know,
And
you
what you
can
do with the
imagine
shore,
when-
they already did two. He did the cow and he did the calf.
The calf was dead.
right, but the
We're
question
not
of the
sure.
calf, the question is, did he do the calf?
Right.
he might not have done the calf. It could be the calf died before the
Right,
goring.
But there is no sign on the calf, and there's no sign
No,
on the
no, no,
calf.
no, right, you're right. So what Tova is saying is that if the ox gored the cow in such a way that the
Right.
body of the calf was pierced as well,
Oh,
then we have no question. Then we know
Blood bled
that,
out.
or, right, so there you go. The, yeah.
but if the calf was dead before, what if it was like dead, still inside the body of the cow?
So that's another
Another
case
case,
which is
yeah.
possible, and maybe the cow would have expelled that calf and prior to it, and then we would have the same question too. But our main premise is that if a cow is gored, if a pregnant cow is gored, and the baby dies, it's a result of the goring, if that calf remains inside at the time.
Maybe.
Eva?
In the American legal system, if
Robin, you listening? Robin's a lawyer.
husband used to be, if a dog bites a person, the first bite is free.
Okay, so similar
Yeah,
concept.
this is
right?
where they get it from, I guess.
I guess so, But she's saying that if it's the first time the dog bites, it's not an habitual biter, and the owner is not necessarily required to muzzle that dog or protect it, or protect it.
Regardless of the
They don't have
injuries.
to pay anything.
They don't have to pay anything. Okay, good to know.
So it's only the second bite, because when I was growing up, I remember it was 3 bites.
3 bites.
Oh, 3 bites and you're out?
The dog is out.
Let me tell you, there are a lot of little dogs that are running around, and when we go by on the bike, you know, they're trying to nip
The
at us.
little ones are the ones that wanna bite
They're
us.
the fiercest
They
ones.
come
the
after
little
our
dogs.
ankles.
They are the most neurotic, the little ones.
Okay, so does everybody understand the difference
Run
between
'em
the three different types of dispute? Okay?
Okay.
And you could probably think of cases that happen today, that could be similar, right? Certainly with purchased item, we had the case where somebody finds something in the street, that's another one that's certainly possible. In terms of the storekeeper, that for sure. You know, I sent my son to bring home a bag of flour, because his mother's making challah, and he goes and picks it up, and the storekeeper says, he did pay, he didn't pay, whatever it is, and now I'm obligated to pay. So those are things, common things that can happen all the time.
I have an actual case.
Okay,
Okay, somebody dropped off a check for the transportation to the cruise line,
okay,
made it out to cash.
okay,
Nobody could find the check.
Ooh.
So what happens?
stop payment.
That's what they've suggested.
That's
First, let's see if the check was cashed. Was the check cashed?
Apparently the
could
check
see-
wasn't cashed, but, or, you know, if
Anybody
somebody
can cash
giving you
it.
cash and you
It's only
didn't.
made out to cash, anybody could cash that check.
Right.
If
Right.
it was dropped on the ground.
Right.
Right, exactly. So these rules, they're based on logic, right, and difference of opinion, and they could happen today, right? Marilyn?
What happens when in the Gomorrah they write these things and then life adds these things that we're adding in?
Right?
Does the Gomorrah continue to throw in different scenarios as to how, does it get more complicated?
Right, so our body of Jewish law, halacha, right, evolves. It doesn't evolve in the sense that core principles ever change. They don't. We still can't light a fire on Shabbos, but the definition of a fire on Shabbos might change.
That's
Might change based on modern developments, or modern science, or you see people come to shul in these electric scooters, right? Which when we were kids, you would think that's impossible, that couldn't happen. But today, the science in Israel have figured out ways to do it within halacha. So the basic rule applies, right? But it evolves.
So, is your question, Marilyn, if I understand, are there people today writing things on, that are coming up, adding to the Gemara?
Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay.
And so that's called, generally it's called responsa, and in Hebrew they call it shilas and chuvas, questions and answers. So if I'm not sure, so here, Mindel bought a an implement to squeeze lemons and limes because she's making a salad for the Hanukkah party. By the way, if you haven't signed up, you're missing a very good menu. So, and one of the items is a salad that has lemons and limes in it, and
Only
she needed
limes?
only limes. Okay. So, and she bought a tool to squeeze the limes, and it can do lemons or limes, but anyway, and it's metal, but it's painted, right? So we know that metal implements need to be toiveled. They have to be immersed in the mikveh before we can use them.
But it's coated,
But it's coated. So the question is that
with or
Does it
without a bracha.
is it required to toivel that lemon squeezer, whatever it is? So that's something that requires asking a question. So we're going to be double checking with Rabbi Yasker before it's going to be used to find out what is the right thing. So it's a new. It's not that new, but it's fairly new. And that's kind of, can I use my dishwasher on Pesach, right? You know, can I use the same dishwasher? What? You know,
That's a lot of.
Depends who
you ask, it depends if you're smart. That's a
Let's
lot
say
of different
total.
so it's just to answer Marilyn's question that these.
That's why you can make the bracha, or is it without a bracha? Really, because why make the bracha if you're not supposed to?
When in doubt, just
Let me know what he said.
So where,
Well, Tvila with a bracha, without a bracha. That's
so
that's-
David,
Well,
where
yeah,
do you
that's
go
what
to
he made
now?
this right
Because
way.
the Gemara's all written. The Gemara's all written now. It's, I don't know how many hundreds of years old. So there's another book that you would go to find some of these newer things. It's gonna be different.
Correct. And there are authorities today who are responding to questions like this. So the most famous, the last generation of Moshe Feinstein, that he would get daily, he would get many questions, and he would spend his time responding to them and eventually putting groups of them together into volumes. And they're indexed. You can go on the computer today and you can look up these things and you can find a response. And generally speaking, they're going to refer to something that's in here. They're not going to just invent it.
Right.
They're going to respond. They're going to refer back to this is what their source is going to be. So we are learning the source, and that's why when we had references to other books of the Gemara, like this is in a different Masechta, this one's a different Masechta. So I wanted to bring that in. That's what the handout sheets are, showing what is the primary source. Where is this thing first discussed? And so we've had that benefit. Robin?
I just wanted to say that the American legal system works the same way, that judges look at precedent, whatever might have been stated before, whether it's in the Constitution or statutes, and then they contrast or compare based on the facts of the situation. So it's the same principles that we see in operation today.
And it's all based on the
Hebrew concept.
I think, certainly some of the original legal system for America was based on common law, and common law derives somewhat from the theological law, so sure, from the Judeo-Christian tradition. But I don't know how much, if you look at the common law, how much people will say that is because it comes from, this commandment or this law, but there are a lot of similarities.
right, and the same way, really. I mean, what does the Supreme Court spend their time on? Deciding whether something is constitutional or not. So that when a law is passed or an executive order is issued or whatever, and then people challenge the legality of that, they go back to the original. They go back to the U.S. Constitution to decide whether does that action taken by the Congress or the President or some local court or municipality or local government, does that conflict with our basic law, which is the U.S. Constitution? And this is our Constitution. So whatever the rabbis do in the future cannot contradict, cannot conflict with this. So, but there are many thousands upon thousands of books being written today, expanding, treating with modern cases as the world is developed. Can I use a Shabbos clock on Shabbos, right? am I turning the light on? What am I doing? So somebody had to deal with that, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be able to do that. Anybody? Okay, so let's see if we can go on a little bit in our text. So now, if you're in the Hebrew, so again, we're Beis Amid Beis, and count up 10 lines. Okay, and if you're in the English, so it's like the middle of the book, and we're on page
2B?
2B3.
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 or not 2B?
In English, in Hebrew?
In the Hebrew, you're on Beis Amid Beis, so you're good.
You where?
And if you're in
English.
if you're in the Hebrew, it's 2B, Beis Amid Beis, right? And if you're in the English, the English starts like in the middle of the book, and it's 2B3. Okay. So let's take a look. So count 10 lines up in the center part, the block letters. That's the Gemara itself, and it says. So we're trying to now expand our principle, and the person that we're dealing with right now is Sumchus, because Sumchus says his case was the case of the storekeeper, and what he was saying is that basically there's no way to settle it, and he says at the top of the page, Mammon hamuto b'safek cholkin below shua, that money which is in doubt, we just divide it, and there's no swearing involved. So coming down to the bottom now, where he says, El Iyamet Sumchus says, Hashta ma hasum delo tafsi travayu cholkin below shua. So what is the difference in the case, let's say, of the dead calf? So nobody's holding on to that calf, right? It's not like Fran and Miriam are both holding on to the sweater. So we can't really, no one is saying it's really mine. The two litigants, Tova and Harriet, neither one of them is saying what actually took place, because nobody knows. I mean, Harriet is not saying to Tova, your ox killed my calf. And Tova is not saying, my ox did not kill your calf, because no one knows, right? And so neither one of them, says Sumchus, in this case, is holding on to the object. And neither one of them is claiming. Therefore, the division is made without anybody swearing, because who can swear? Nobody can swear. Harriet can't swear that Tova's ox killed her calf. Tova cannot swear that her ox did not kill the calf. Therefore, the decision must be done, and we have no witnesses, right? So the first week we said Eva was out in the parking lot and she saw what happened, but we don't have that happening. There are no witnesses to what took place. We know that something happened. We know there's a dead calf. We don't know why, and therefore the only thing we can do is say that there's a doubt here. And Sumchus says, in this case, we make a division with no shvur, which means that Tova must pay Harriet 25% of the value of that calf. So they're basically dividing the damage without a shvur, without swearing. Okay, so therefore, Sumchus would sort of have a problem with our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah, how is the division done? When is the division done? What has to happen before the division happens? What do the two litigants have to do?
Swear?
They have to swear, right? So in the case of the cow and the calf, there's no swearing going on. I mean, maybe there isn't under their breath, but no putting your hand on the Bible, and that's not happening, right? So are we saying then that Sumchus, a respected authority in monetary law, would disagree with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says that there must be a shvur involved, right? So the Gemara says, what's the difference? Hacha here, the travayu tafsi law, lo kol shekain. So certainly they should be able to divide it without a shvur, because they're holding on to it. It's obvious that each one of them has some sort of a claim, right? So certainly it should be they should be able to divide it without swearing. So afilu tema sumchus. So the Gemara says, no, we can even find a way that sumchus would agree with our Mishnah too. Why? Because ki amar sumchus shema v'shema. So there's a principle, bari v'shema, bari odif. Bari means certain, shema means doubtful. So if I don't know, we didn't pick on Kate yet. Oh, we made you the storekeeper, right? So okay, so here Shari's here for the first time. So if Shari and Margalit have a dispute, and Shari is certain, and Margalit says, well, maybe. So we take the claim of the person who is definite, because she's making a definite claim. The other person's not denying it really. She says, I'm not sure. But in our case, we have Bari Ubari. They're both certain. Fran and Miriam are both coming in with a definite claim. But the case of the dead calf, it's Shema v'Shema. It's both of them are in doubt. Neither one of them knows for sure what took place, and neither one of them is claiming that they know what took place. In that case, he would say divided without a shvuah. But in our case, Aval Bari Ubari, where you have two claimants, right, Miriam and Fran, both of them definitely saying that that it's theirs. Lo Amar, he wouldn't say that the division should be made without a shvuah.
What's bari?
Bari means certain.
Positive.
I'm positive, right? So I know, I found that, I picked it up, and the other person holding the other side says the same thing. So he doesn't state his principle in the case of two people who are definite in their claim. This principle of dividing it without a shvuah is a case where neither one of them really can be certain. They know the calf is dead. There's no question about that. But they don't know how the calf came to be dead. Okay? Okay, let's go a little further. So Rabba bar Huna, and how about Rabba bar Huna? To Amar, he says, Amar Sumchus afilu bari bari. Oh, but Rabba bar Huna, an Amora now, he's later generation, he says that Sumchus's principle of dividing without a shvuah would even apply in a case of bari and bari. So then Ma'ikal Amemer, what could he say? How would he answer this question that Sumchus would disagree with our Mishnah? Here is a case of bari and bari, and Rabba bar Huna says that Sumchus, even in a case of bari and bari, would say divide without a shvuah. So what could he answer? So afilu tema Sumchus, even he could hold his principle according to Sumchus, because why? Ki omar Sumchus hechat iga derara de mamona. Sumchus stated his principle when there is a loss, a monetary loss, to one or both of the litigants. Okay, so there's a dead calf right there. That calf belonged to Harry. Harry has lost money, right? In the case of Fran and Miriam, they have no investment in that sweater. There's no loss involved, right? So in that case, he wouldn't necessarily say that they should divide without a shvuah. Since neither one of them has an investment in it, maybe they'd be less likely to swear falsely or whatever. So he's saying that in that case he would require the shvuah. But here in our case of the sweater, where there is no loss to Fran, right? She got up this morning and didn't have that sweater, right? And same thing with Miriam, right? So then he would not make his principle. So the Gemara says, "V'lav kal v'chomer hu." Is it not a kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer means I understand something easy from something difficult, and we're going to say what it is. Ma hasam there diga derora de mamona lamar, viga derora de mama lamar. There, in the case of the dead calf, if we're expecting Tova to pay a portion, right? So Harriet has a loss, Tova has a loss, a potential loss. Then, for sure, V'ikala Meimar Kula Lamar, V'ikala Meimar Kula Lamar, and it could be a case where they could both say it's theirs. In our case, it's completely ours. He says, Amar Sumchus, Mama Namuta Basafek Cholkin below Shvuah. So he holds his principle that money which is held which is doubtful as to who owns it, what we do is we divide it without requiring the shvua, right? So hacha here, deleket deror de mamona, since there is no loss of money in our case, whereas in the case of the cow there is a definite loss. Harriet lost, right? And if Tova was required to pay, so then Tova would have lost. But in the case of the sweater, neither one of them lost. No matter what we do, neither one of them lost. So in that case, he said, he can say that it belongs to both, lo kol shekain. So certainly, you would have said that they should divide without a shvua, because there's no loss involved here, right? And their claim is equally valid. So Sumkus could say that in our case also that you divide without a shvua. So the Gemara says, yeah, you're probably right. It's afilu tema Sumkus, even Sumkus, because shvua zu midrabanan. This shvua that we are requiring Fran and Miriam to swear is not a Torah obligation. The rabbis instituted it. Why? Why did they institute this rule? Why do you think? Okay, I'm going to tell you why. It says, because Kid Rabbi Yochanan, according to what Rabbi Yochanan said, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, I'm reading, I'm on 3a now. I'm sorry, I continued along. So let me see, 1, 2, 3. I'm 6 lines down on 3a. 3a. You're right there. You just, no, flip back. Or 3a1 if you're in the English.
3A1, okay.
3a1, right? So what did Rabbi Yochanan say? And why is this a rabbinic imposition, not a Torah obligation? The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said, Shavua zu takanas hachamim. This Shavua is an addition or a decree made by the rabbis. Why? Shelo yehe kol echad ve'echad holech v'tokev v'taliso shachavero. That Fran is walking along. She's got this very nice sweater. She's intending to go and mail it to her grandson because it's cold where he lives. And along comes Miriam, grabs a hold of it and says, it's mine. So Rabbi Yochanan says, we don't want that to take place. We don't want such a thing.
Oh.
So we're going to require the two of them to come and swear. Because if not, what would prevent Miriam, we can talk about her, she's not here, what would prevent Miriam from going ahead and grabbing Fran's sweater? If she could just take a hold of it and divide it, right? If Sukkot says divide it with no shvua, so anybody could go ahead. So Rabbi Yochanan says we impose this shvua because we want to make sure that people can't just walk along and take a hold of what belongs to someone else. And he would say it belongs to me. So now we bring in Rabbi Yossi, and this one you're gonna hear it. I'm gonna tell you why I like it so much. This is Lema of Masnis and Lo Rabbi Yossi. So let's say our mission does not hold like Rabbi Yossi. Why? Because what Rabbi Yossi says, the Rabbi Yossi says, Omar in Cain Ma'avsid Ramai. What did the deceptive person, what does he lose? Right? So often when we hear a particular celebrity or a politician or somebody gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar, taking private jet flights on the government dime, or embezzling money, whatever.
Joe Biden?
What?
Biden?
Well, I'm not bringing anybody in particular, but the point, what happens to them? So the court makes them make restitution. What does that mean, restitution? You stole $1,000, you paid back $1,000. How are you being punished? You're only paying for what you took, right? So Rav Yossi says, if that's all we do, Ma'avsid Ramai. What is the loss to that dishonest person? Nothing. So Rav Yossi says no. The reason that we impose the shvua is not because we're not sure, is because otherwise people can commit illegal acts, dishonest acts, and there's no consequence, right? Because if I steal a television from Best Buy and I get caught in the parking lot and I say, okay, sorry, and I bring it back, is that good enough?
No.
Not really. There's no punishment involved for that. So what's to stop me from going down to Walmart and doing the same thing? Right? Which is what we saw happening this all summer.
So is it the shvua that allows for punishment, not restitution? It's the shvua that allows the actual punishment other than restitution? Is it the act of making that shua,
Is that a
give it
punishment itself?
license for that person to be punished? Is that what you're saying?
No, so what Rav Yossi is saying is that people do not take a shua lightly. Putting your hand on the Bible and swearing, just like people are afraid to commit perjury, right? All these things, it depends on what is and all that stuff. Because people do not want to commit perjury in court, because there are penalties for that, right? So if you say to them, you go ahead and grab the property of someone else and we're gonna divide it without requiring a shua, so there's nothing preventing somebody from doing that. Somebody who has that motivation. But if you say, we're gonna require you to come into court and take an oath, put your hand on the Bible and be on record, and then people are gonna be hesitant to do that, right? So it's not that it's a punishment, but it would possibly prevent people from acting this way. So Rav Yossi says that if we don't at least impose the shvua on them, and then if it's determined that it was a false shvua, then there's gonna be punishment for that. But if we just allow people to make claims on the property of others without any sort of punishment to them, what's to prevent dishonest people from doing that all day long? And with that, we have to leave it, because it's 12 o'clock, and we'll continue to go on next week.